Welcome to Amazon Legends, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became power sellers, also providers specializing in helping sellers, aggregators that acquire sellers, and former Amazonians will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here is your host, Nick Urison.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today has been in retail since she could, as she puts it, talk and walk. And she's a former Amazonian and started her private label company to sell on Amazon, to learn the operations side of it. And today she's the founder of Envision Horizons, which is an Amazon agency. And her firm presides over $300 million in Amazon sales of their private label clients, who are also multi-channel retailers, which is something that is important. And when she's not working, she's the mother of two and spends time with her kids. With that, everybody, meet my guest, Laura Meyer. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. You know, I say this every time I have somebody like you. I cannot imagine how women have kids and a business that they basically bring up. Because for men, we look at our businesses as our kid, but really, in the case of a woman, you know, you've got both. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, my youngest is just over 3 months. So I most recently came back into the swing of things. And there's no question that being a founder of really any business is challenging when you're pregnant, but also postpartum, because it is very hard to step away. I will fully admit I was on Slack, and this is not like something I should really be like, I'm not proud of by any means, but I was on Slack talking with my team within 2 hours of giving birth to my daughter. Granted, I was on adrenaline and there were a lot of things happening and I can't sit still just laying in a hospital bed, but it certainly is a lot. And I think it's especially hard in a service business to tell your clients like, hey, I'm having to step away from me being involved in your business for this time period. And I'll admit, like, there's a little bit of guilt on both sides of not wanting to leave or set those boundaries with the client, but also there's the guilt of making sure that you're a present mother and parent in general. So yeah. It has its dynamics, but I think the big thing is you just have to do your best and keep a level head.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can speak from experience. When I reached out to you and discussed the show and wanted you to come on the show, and you said, well, I'm going to be on maternity leave, but after that. And sure enough, after that, here you are. Right? So, you are definitely on top of things. So everybody, we're going to talk about something that you all want to know, because everybody, to me, is in the same situation. So if you are getting into a category as a private label and you are facing large brands with deep pockets, how do you take them on and beat them? And that's what we're going to talk about. And that's what Laura is expert at. So tell us, Laura, how do you do that? How do you beat a competition with deep pockets?
It's a great question. And so there's a little bit of history to this, right? Even 5 years ago, you could launch a private label business on Amazon and successfully launch and scale the business with a healthy P&L. And what really disrupted the Amazon ecosystem, of course, was COVID, because a lot of brands that are established in non-Amazon channels flooded to Amazon. And I had first view of this because I run an agency that works with omni-channel brands. And my phone was ringing off the hook of brands wanting to launch on the Amazon platform. There were a lot of things that happened. I mean, not only was there the surge in e-commerce demand, but also there was the iOS 14 update. And for those who aren't familiar with this, Apple essentially blocked the ability to track their users for Google and Facebook. And so Facebook advertising all of a sudden became super, super expensive for new customer acquisition. Well, why is this relevant to Amazon? Because a lot of these omnichannel brands were now looking to not only sell on Amazon for an incremental audience, but to also sell on Amazon for better customer acquisition cost through Amazon advertising. And this really matured the Amazon marketplace quickly and made it more of a marketplace where you have these established or emerging brands with very deep pockets from their VCs who can operate at selling at a break even or a loss for 12 months. So then let's bring it back to a small business or a private label business. How do you compete with that? Right? Like that's a huge challenge. And I always focus on fundamentals. So I know we already mentioned like assuming you have a great product, but I really want to zero in on that because in the early days of private label, you know, everyone talks about the garlic press. That was the example product in many, many podcasts like back in 2015 and so forth. But that was a product where you didn't necessarily have to have a lot of innovation, right? Like you could go on Amazon and find a niche of brown shoelaces and you could have a multi-million-dollar private label business. That's not necessarily the case anymore because competition has come. And so having a product that truly is innovative in its own sense or higher quality, like you need some differentiation that will help you stand out so that you don't just compete on price. And the price piece is important because if you really look at a lot of the big categories on Amazon, there are a ton of manufacturers from overseas who are selling directly on Amazon where you'll never be able to compete with them on price. So number one is you need to have a product that you can compete either in value. There's a big trend overall in premiumization. I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago where even WD-40 in their earnings calls, they're talking about premiumization of having like different wands and handles where they can upsell the WD-40 spray. And so thinking about how can you innovate there is step number one. Step number two is you really need to have an understanding of your profitability. Where I see a lot of businesses get in trouble is they really buy into the concept of, well, I just have to buy placement on Amazon for SEO. And you do, but you have to do it very intentionally. And what I encourage brands to do is really do their keyword research, identify what long tail keywords are very well correlated with their products, and zero in on, you know, your top 20 keywords. Don't try and go for the most volume searched keyword. Don't try and go where the category leaders are currently dominating. You have to be patient and you have to build that momentum over time. Reviews, of course, are huge and reviews can be challenging to accumulate. We do everything by the book at our firm. You know, if you get caught at Amazon, and essentially if Amazon catches you, you can lose selling privileges indefinitely. Not to mention FTC, I think they'll eventually get much more involved with review manipulation. And it's just, quite honestly, it's lying to customers, right? In my opinion, it's very dishonest. So that goes back to, again, having a great product so that naturally you start accumulating these positive reviews. Also, you want a strategy of how to request those reviews, which there's a ton of softwares out there that help you get that. But now let's go into some of the optics and strategy. So how do you compete with brands with deep pockets as it pertains to advertising? Well, number one, you have to understand where your pricing falls within the market. So if you can compete on price, or the majority, you do your research, and the majority of the brands that are showing up on the SERP for the keywords that you want to rank for are within your price range, you should absolutely lean into and maximize your sponsored product ads. Sponsored brand is also great. Typically, sponsored brand performs at a lower ROAS than sponsored product, with the exception of the apparel category. That's one category where I've seen sponsored brand in some cases actually outperform sponsored product on efficiency. And then if you are a brand where you're maybe more premium, or what's considered to be masstige, right? We actually really encourage you to build a media plan where you have some mid-level activations, meaning exploring DSP, doing some more upper funnel marketing, because if you can't compete on price, or you're not within, say, 20% of what the average is on page one, then you have to build some of that brand esteem or prestige. And that can be a longer tailed approach, but there are long-term benefits, and you'll likely end up receiving a better blended ROAS than if you strictly only invested in SERP advertising. So do you have any questions on this before I get into this deeper?
Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of things you mentioned. Reviews. So when you launch your listing, your goal obviously is first collect reviews as much as possible. So you enroll in Wine program, and then you do other things. Can you share with us your thoughts how a seller can deal with some early negative reviews if they are posted by their competition? Because that does happen, right?
It does happen. And it's a shame that Amazon allows this, to be honest. I think I see situations, right, where what was I looking for? I was looking for dog collars, and I looked at the reviews, and there were old reviews for a supplement on the same listing. And so what is really frustrating is when you follow the rules, and then you find these situations where a manufacturer, in most cases, is manipulating Amazon policy. When it comes to the shady side of Amazon, I've actually had clients receive emails from companies based in China that basically say, pay us X number of dollars, otherwise we're going to leave negative reviews on your products, which is pretty wild. And we then shared those emails and documented it with Amazon, because that, of course, is blackmail, right? That's completely illegal. And there needs to be better policing of it. We have had situations where we do report reviews that we believe are not legitimate, even if they are verified. You can click in, you can see the profile of the reviewer, you can see what else they've reviewed, and you can attempt to make a business case. But sadly and unfortunately, Amazon doesn't have a high rate of actually removing those reviews. The only reviews that my team and I have successfully been able to remove is when we can prove that counterfeit product was sold on that listing, and that then led to negative customer reviews. It's probably been 2 years since we've been able to get a review removed claiming that it was competition. Amazon is very, very hesitant to do that, because it can open Pandora's box and people just making claims.
Sure. The second question I have is, and I'm sure you see this all the time, so people don't want to compete on price. They want to establish themselves as a premium brand. So
Mhm.
they want to be a little bit more expensive than they don't want to be the most expensive, but they want to be a little bit more expensive than the cheaper ones. And as yet, that's who you are going up against.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10, those cheaper ones tend to dominate most of the keywords and everything else. So what is your strategy for taking on brands like that?
Yes. So I think it's also important to note that if you are more of a masstige price point or prestige price point, building brand off of Amazon is just as important as building a brand on Amazon. And what I mean by this is social media can, of course, be a huge undertaking and in some cases even a distraction. But identify maybe just one off-channel outlet that you really want to lean into. So this, of course, can be TikTok, it can be Instagram, but it can also be affiliate marketing or really leaning into PR and getting placement in listicles or articles where they list, top products to buy on Amazon. This can be really, really beneficial in not only driving sales, but it also boosts your BSR and it can boost your organic ranking. And this is something that is especially impactful leading into deal days. So we're just coming off of Prime Day, and leading up to Prime Day, we had locked in what deals our clients were going to offer, basically 2 months in advance. And then we told them to go to their PR teams to start pitching their deals to these articles that we know all of these publications put out because they're making money on Amazon's affiliate program. And Amazon has launched I believe it's called Creator Connections or something along those lines. I'm blanking on the actual name of it, but they're also trying to build their own marketplace. It's in beta still, so you have to be invited to the program, where you can give away product in exchange for write-ups in blog posts or even people's social. And then you just pay an additional percent on Amazon's base affiliate fee. So I'm really bullish on this program if it can scale and be executed properly. When we initially tested it, there wasn't the scale yet for it to be super impactful. But if Amazon does this program right, I think it could be a great opportunity for brands. Some other things too, when it comes to Amazon, is there are a lot of things that you can do that won't actually cost you money. So what are those things? There's Amazon Post. Now, is leaning into Amazon Post going to take you from 20K a month to 100K a month? No, but it does get you essentially free real estate on Amazon. And by not having it, your competitors could be on your product detail pages. There's also the customer engagement tool, where now if you really encourage followers on your storefront, one thing that we do for a lot of our brands is in the header image on their storefront, we'll include an arrow to point to the follow button to hopefully increase the number of followers. And now you can start to reach out to those customers and tell them about new product launches, deals you're running. And more recently, we actually saw you now have the ability to even reach out to abandoned cart customers, which if you're really savvy on a D2C, that was always a downfall of Amazon in terms of retention marketing and bringing customers back to follow through on their purchases.
So there's so many different things. So tell me a little bit about that follow button. When you say, which image are you referring to? Not the main product image, right?
No, on the Amazon storefront.
Oh, I see. So you're talking about Amazon storefront, asking people through the creative to join the post.
Yeah,
Okay.
so on the storefront, right, there's like that top landscape image. We'll sometimes have an arrow that points to the follow button that's right below that.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the media strategy, which is where you were focused on earlier. So what is the right media strategy for taking on these large brands?
So again, I think the right media strategy is you first have to do really understand what your budget is based on the profitability of your products and your brand. So one exercise that we do with a lot of our brands where they have a larger catalog is we actually take a look at their profitability by product, and then we then calculate what the max tacos would be for each product, where it would be a break even. And so that way we're not losing money. The big thing with Amazon as a small brand is you can't afford to lose money, right? Like we're all here to have a profitable business. And I think a lot of businesses can hurt themselves by having this mentality of, oh, well, we just have to lose money for this for 6 months. And by doing that, you can get to month 7 and 8 and you're still losing money. And then you fundamentally are in trouble. So knowing first how much you can afford to spend. Then, in my opinion, it's really focusing on the long tail keywords that you have the ability to gain SEO ranking in, as well as having high conversion rates for paid search. And then you'll want to start to look at the data too, depending on the type of product you have, and looking at the LTV, the lifetime value of your Amazon customer. So if you're a consumable, you'll want to have an understanding of, how often are customers coming back, what percent of customers that bought my product the first time come back within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Because by having a view on the LTV, you can then start to up your budgets and be able to lean into advertising even more at what wouldn't necessarily be profitable on an individual transaction, but what would be profitable from an LTV perspective. Because you still do need to be aggressive, especially if you're first starting out, in gaining some type of market share.
So how do you track your customer purchases on Amazon, since this really is Amazon's customer, it's not your customer, and you don't have a customer ID like you would have in your own system. So how do you stay on top of that?
So my company, we've developed our own proprietary Amazon analytics suite called My Horizons, which we use for our clients. And through that, we are able to calculate LTV specifically to that Seller Central account. Where things can be a little tricky, of course, is if there's third-party sellers. We obviously don't have access to that data, but as long as you're owning the buy box and you've been selling on Amazon for at least 12 months, we'll be able to have a really good view of what your LTV is.
I see. So it's something that you have in-house, and it's based on, so what if the buy box is shared by multiple sellers, then the calculations become not so reliable? Is that the case?
Correct. Yes, because a customer could buy from a third-party seller, and then the second time they buy from you, there's no way to truly know if that same customer actually purchased from that third-party seller, which is all the more reason why it's so important to own your buy box and distribution.
So you are able to track the sales by customer IDs at the end of the day. That's what you are able to do. Okay. I mean, for our listeners' benefit, we want to give them the methodology, so to speak. So at the end, what you're looking to do is, how many times does the same customer buy from you and how much money they spend?
Correct.
So, and then, before they buy again, is it 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, or whatever? Then over the course of X number of years, you say that this customer is going to spend this much money, and that's the value of that customer. And of course, that comes at no advertising, right?
Yeah, well, it depends, right? There,
Yes.
you can do DSP and other remarketing to increase that LTV. I think the other big call out as it pertains to LTV and repurchase rates is you can also look at it at the brand level or at the individual product level. So really understanding the customer journey, because there may be certain product types or catalog types where maybe you have a loss leader. So you have that product that brings the customer into your funnel, and then you remarket those customers to then buy other products in your catalog that are much more profitable. And
Mhm.
that's something that we especially track with our CPG and beauty brands, is they usually have that one flagship product that they're known for. But then how do we get that customer to then try other products in their catalog and really deepen the relationship with that customer?
I see. Okay. So,
And this can also be really important to non-consumables, right? Like let's say you sell kitchenware product and you sold dinner plates to a customer. You'll want to then, of course, try and bring them back and remarket them to get them to buy your glassware or your silverware or other products you have.
mhm. And how are you able to bring back an Amazon customer to your listing?
There's a few ways. The biggest one, of course, is DSP remarketing. And with DSP, which is demand side platform, uh, which is essentially Amazon's display advertising, you can remarket those who have bought your product. You can remarket those who have simply viewed your product. And you could even remarket those that have viewed or purchased from competitors. And this is very helpful, again, for that more masstige or prestige price point, because now you can start to go after the customers that have shown a history or interest in spending at that price point, because the SERP is always going to be optimized for the lowest price because those have the highest conversion rate. And Amazon rewards you for the number of units you sell. They don't reward you based on the amount of revenue that a product generates.
Yeah. Well, now that you open the gates to DSP, that we have to talk about DSP a little bit.
Yeah.
So DSP, as you put it, demand side platform. So when somebody advertises on Amazon, where they create campaigns and that's sponsored products or sponsored brands, and under sponsored brands, they can run video ads and others, different versions of it. But all of these are paid per click, right? So
Yes.
they pay for every click. When you go to DSP, that's no longer the case, right?
Correct. It's a CPM model.
Yeah, so that means that every time your ad is displayed, you are paying for it. So even if they don't click on it, that's a cost.
That is true. Yes.
Yeah. The other thing about DSP is DSP for everyone? For example, somebody who's just launching, is it advisable for them to start with DSP?
No. First of all, you won't be able to even set up remarketing because you need a large enough audience to create and build those campaigns. So very good question. In most cases, we don't, for brands where we launch them from scratch on Amazon, we typically don't even incorporate DSP into the media plan until month 4, month 6, unless the brand is really large and already pretty established.
I have something important for all my listeners. Sellers lose money on lost or damaged inventory with Amazon, which can add up to a lot over a year. Did you know that there is a way to claim all your losses? Getida is the global leader in Amazon FBA auditing and reimbursements for Amazon FBA sellers worldwide. They deliver results with no upfront costs. They get paid only when you get paid. Visit www.getida.com/legends to learn more and sign up. And thanks to our friends at Getida, your first $400 in reimbursements will be free. It's www.getida.com/legends. And that's www.getida.com/legends. Yeah, there's two types of planning. There is the time-based planning, and then there's the event-based planning. So what is the trigger for, because I come across sellers, all day long, and they're like all over the place. They're running their own PPC campaigns, and then they hire somebody, and then they hire somebody else. And so it's all over the place. And put that next to someone who's basically said, I don't want to do anything with PPC, and gave it to a professional, and that professional is consistently managing the PPC campaign. Of course, there's a difference between the two, right? So, and if then these two businesses wanted to go to DSP, then what is it that you're looking at? Just the fact that they've been around for 6 months is not enough, right? So what other criteria is important for somebody to say, okay, I'm going to go to DSP?
Yeah. So I think the other area that we like to look is, have they hit a point of diminishing return on PPC, right? Eventually, you're going to get to a point where the next dollar you spend, you're not getting the same ROAS. And this point of diminishing return happens a lot faster in our experience when you are a higher price point product. That it is a little bit larger of an opportunity to scale your spend when you can compete on price. So once you start to hit that diminishing return, that's then usually the time and the opportunity to then start exploring DSP as a part of your media mix.
So you're running your sponsored products, sponsored brands, and then you're getting, 18% takeoffs. And you're getting half your traffic coming from organic, half your traffic coming from paid search.
Yeah.
And then you push the ad spend further, your takeoffs starts to drop, right? When I say drop,
increase,
it's not favorable. In other words, it goes to 20%, 22%. So that's when you are saying that DSP would be an option to consider, right?
Yes. I firmly support maxing out sponsored product, sponsor brand first, especially if you are a smaller or newer business. But again, a lot of marketing, right, is testing and learning. So let's say for a month, you increase your budget by an additional $10,000 and you end up not really seeing that return on that incremental spend. That $10,000 should then probably be positioned to then be invested into DSP.
Can you share with us why DSP is more effective to scale your revenues, even though your sponsored campaigns are not able to do that?
Yes. So with DSP, the first place to start is the remarketing piece. And why this is so important is when you think of D2C, retention marketing or remarketing is actually one of the most lucrative types of marketing on D2C. They have their email marketing, they have SMS marketing, and then there's the actual cookie placement where you looked at a dress on Revolve and the Revolve ads follow you all throughout the internet. And DSP gives you that opportunity to then follow the customers and remain top of mind. So that's why I think it's really important to start to incorporate it into your media mix as your business scales, because it can have such a high ROAS. Now, you can, and in my opinion, there really are two marketing initiatives. You have marketing for retention and replenishment, so building the LTV of your consumer base. And then you have marketing for new to brand customers. And new to brand customers, you're hopefully acquiring through generic keywords. But through DSP, you can also really leverage, as I mentioned earlier, targeting those that had viewed similar products of competitors. So now you can hopefully start to gain market share. Because of course, with pay-per-click, you can do the ASIN targeting where you're targeting your clients through PPC, but those often have pretty low return on investments. And I'm not saying on DSP it's going to be significantly better, but we have just had much more scale and opportunity with those placements, because the other thing you have to think about is everyone has access to the campaign manager. Not everyone has access to DSP.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true. You know, what I was thinking about was this DSP advertising. Share with us where that appears. So, because we know that when you do a search results come up, and we know exactly where the sponsored products appear.
Mhm.
So where do the DSP platform ads appear?
The DSP ads appear on Amazon, but they also appear off Amazon too. And that's actually part of the settings where we do have some clients where, if they're investing in other display networks, they want all the off Amazon placements off. So it's exclusively to Amazon owned and operated properties. But it's a lot of the display. So what's interesting is sponsored display and DSP on Amazon's site actually share inventory. So there are some cases where DSP will be shown in the same place that a sponsored display ad would be, but the targeting of DSP is just so much more robust, which is why we tend to see significantly stronger ROAS on DSP than we do sponsored display.
I see. So sponsored, so this is the sponsored brands area where you have banners and things. That's where
Sponsored display, not sponsored brand. So sponsored brand,
sponsored
right, is at the top of the SERP. Sponsored
Yeah.
display can be on a product detail page. It can be on the side bar of
under the cart, under the add to cart.
Yep, that's another placement. As you peruse Amazon, there's a lot more displays ads now than there used to be, and you're looking right at either DSP or sponsored display ads.
Yeah. Those are the kinds of ads that you don't realize they are there. They're very, softly sneak in, and then they appear, because they don't also, when the page loads up, they don't appear right away.
Yeah.
I noticed that. So, okay. So what I'm hearing from you is the real power of DSP is retargeting.
Absolutely.
So in order to retarget, you would be expected to target them first, acquire them, so that you can bring them back. And it makes total sense. Okay, so that means, going back to the beginning, when you are taking on a new brand, you are launching a new brand, and you are pricing it a little bit higher, then you don't want to be the cheapest one. You want to position yourself as a premium one. Really, at the beginning, you have to use social media to establish your brand, your position, and then use the cost per click campaign as much as possible to get to a point where you are now able to graduate to DSP. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, like anything, you want to assert brand authority. And what I mean by that is you have to build the trust of customers, or if your product is unique, you have to educate the market. And so that can be done through social. It can also be done through having really good video content for your sponsor brand video ads. I know it's like a typical marketing response, but it does really depend on the price of your product, the type of product, and the category you sell in. But what I really encourage small businesses to do is there are a lot of things that you could do, and there's in many ways a lot of distractions. And I encourage you to have at least one off Amazon activation that you plan to be really, really good at. Don't try and do it all at once, because then you'll basically be mediocre at a lot of things. Try and be great at just one thing as you start out, meaning be really good at TikTok or be really good at getting PR placements. Focus on one to start. And then when it comes to Amazon, you do want to make sure that you have really good creative. I can't express how important visual selling is on Amazon. We actually just released a case study a few weeks ago where we did a creative overhaul of a brand that sells solar batteries. So like not the sexiest of categories. And we were able to increase their sales by 59%.
Wow.
Simply,
That's big.
that's huge. And that was the before and after of rolling out the creative, because it was educational. We explained why this isn't the cheapest on the market. And to even go back to a earlier question you had, Nick, about how can you combat negative reviews? Well, when I look at a product that maybe has a 3.5 star, really anything below 4, first thing I do is I look at the bad reviews. And if there's a reason for these negative reviews, like they didn't know how to charge it properly, or they just weren't using the product right in itself, call the elephant out in the room in your creative so that the customer has better education on, one, is this product even the right fit for what they're looking for? But two, making sure that they're using the product properly, given the nature of it.
Mm-hmm. So by creatives, you're talking about everything in the image stack?
Everything in the image stack, as well as the A+ content, and also just making sure that you have a very product-centric video on your product detail page. One thing that I think even large brands make a mistake of is they just upload brand video, and that doesn't really sell the product, right? Like how you want to view your product detail page is, imagine, when you go into a grocery store and there's a brand representative handing out samples, and think about what that brand representative would say. That's how you want to approach your creative. Is we really encourage having text overlay on your images, and it not just being 4 different angles of your product in terms of photography. That is your end cap, right? That is not only how you are going to convert your customer, but also how you're going to educate the customer on how to use the product and why the product is so great.
Yeah. So what was the reason for the 59% increase when you changed the creatives? What caused that jump? You were probably, did the number of visitors increase or something else increase?
2 things increase, and it's the 2 things you always want to increase: click-through rates, because we had better main images, and split testing or A/B testing main images can be very insightful once you hit a certain level of scale. If you only have 1,000 sessions a month, that's not significant enough to really know which main image will be the best. But actually, a resource we really leverage is PickFu. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the tool, but it does crowdsourcing, and it's essentially a digital focus group where people will vote on what main image they like the most, and then you can implement that into your product detail page. Mm-hmm. So you improve click-through rate, but most importantly, you improve your unit session percentage, which is essentially your blended paid and organic conversion rate on Amazon.
Yeah, you just pretty much mentioned my 2 magic bullets. So I always say this, anybody who's listened to a few episodes, I say there are 2 magic bullets for success on Amazon. increase your click-through rate, increase your conversion rate. So that you call USP. So this is again an important point. Amazon reports USP, unit session percentage, where they take the number of units sold and divide by number of visitors to the page. I don't know why they did it that way. That really is not the conversion rate, because at the end of the day, you want number of orders divided by number of visitors. That's your true conversion rate. And there is, of course, a relationship between the two, but maybe Amazon decided on USP because the numbers look higher, right?
Well, I also think they did it too because the A9 algorithm is based on units sold, not orders.
Oh, now you're talking. Okay.
Yeah, because your BSR is based on units sold.
So that can never be changed at the end of the day because it's part of the algorithm.
That's my hypothesis.
Well, I mean, listen, unless they go back and change the algorithm, which I doubt very much.
No. Yeah, I mean, look, we definitely have clients where they want to know what we call the order session percentage, and that's super easy to calculate. But in terms of the metric that Amazon wants to see, they want to see a high unit session percentage.
Yeah. So this means that part of the strategy, so there's a couple of metrics that we track. So one of them is USP versus conversion rate, that you call order session percentage.
Yeah.
And we want to know the relationship between the two. The other is average order value versus average item value. And the relationship between those two are important. And of course, if your average item value is equal or close to average order value, that means people are buying one piece at a time.
Yeah.
So now from hearing your interpretation and somewhat of an inside information where why Amazon reports USPs, because it's linked to the Amazon A9 algorithm. It is better for sellers to offer quantity discounts and therefore increase their USP and therefore get favored by the A9 algorithm, right?
Yeah. And so this is always the debate, right? Of do we want to push more individual units, or do we take more of a merchandising approach and sell a 2-pack, a 3-pack of whatever the product is? Because when you sell a 3-pack, Amazon only sees that as a single unit being sold, right? Even though it's a 3-pack. And it is always a juggle because you want to drive as many units as possible to increase your BSR. But from a profitability standpoint, the bundles are often much more profitable for your business. And on the bundles, you can often give better value pricing to the customer. And that's in general why we follow the best practice of having the variations together under the same parent. We've had in cases where we've tested having it split off, where say the 3-pack is separate from the single unit because we want to take up more real estate on the branded SERP. And we almost always revert back to bringing it together because then we see an increase in BSR when we bring the variations together.
Okay, so I have an interesting scenario. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Okay.
So let's imagine let's make it a little bit richer than usual. Let's say that you have 5 variations, and let's assume that 3 of those 5 are converting more than the other 2, and especially 1 is converting the highest. And there's like quite a difference, like converting at 40% when the next one down is at like 28%.
Okay.
And then you've got a couple that's about running at 4, 5, 6%. As you know, Amazon search will automatically bring that high performing ASIN in the search results.
Yeah.
The main product picture. What do you do with those 5 variations? Do you keep them together or do something else?
So again, Amazon is going to be looking at how many units are being sold at the parent level. The other thing to also take into consideration is if you split those variations out, how is that then going to impact your reviews? Because if the top seller, or let's say your top seller has an average of a 4, and then the other 4 variations actually have a 4.5 average, you want to keep them on there because that will improve your average review ranking as well as count.
Yeah. So this is, I have not done this. I have not done this myself, but I've had conversations about it with a couple of fairly deeply involved people in terms of numbers and things to do. And what happens is when you do a search, in the search results, the listing comes up. When you click on it, first of all, the main product picture that's displayed is always the highest performing of those variations.
So
right?
not always. It really depends on what the customer searched. So let's say you have 5 different colors within these variations, right? And the black is your top seller. Neutral colors are always best sellers. And the customer actually searches red widget. The red one should show in Amazon's search results page.
But what if you don't have color, but you simply have sizes or packs, single, 2-pack? People hardly search the pack. So, and if the 3-pack is selling the most, that's going to come up, right?
Yeah, technically Amazon shows whatever variation has sold the most based on that search query.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, in general, it's going to be your top seller, but occasionally you'll find a scenario where maybe your number 2 or your number 3 top selling variation is the one that populates because for whatever reason, for that specific query, it converts best.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, the conversations that I've had, the argument was if you have multiple variations and some of them are performing better than the others, they are basically cannibalizing the sales of the substandard ones where they're not getting the exposure. And therefore, it is better to separate those out. It may impact the sales of the main parent, so to speak, but create another parent and put those separately and drive traffic to them separately. That way you may see a little bit of a drop on the main one, but you will definitely see an increase on the others. As far as reviews, that's a very good question and definitely could be a blunder if it's not considered. And again, I have not seen this in action, but I am told that maybe you can confirm. Amazon has a way of associating reviews with individual child ASINs.
Yeah.
Right? Is that true?
That is true. But then if they're under the same parent, then it accumulates, it adds them all up.
Right. So when you separate them, then the reviews will go with the separated child ASIN, right?
That is correct. Although that does come with a warning label because we have seen scenarios where you split them out and you lose some reviews for whatever reason. And that first 24 hours is a little scary because you can lose them and sometimes they'll come back. But we also have seen scenarios where, maybe you lost 50 reviews in that process.
Yes. Yeah, with Amazon, those things happen.
Well, they sure do.
This is a real intense conversation. I love conversations like this because it takes things. It's one thing to talk strategy, but at the end of the day, it's execution is what matters. And these are the things that people run into when they're executing their strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, should I do a quick recap of Prime Day and some of the stats that we saw?
Because as we are recording this, today is the 18th. In fact, we scheduled our recording for July 11th. And Laura said, you know what? We don't yet know whether it's going to be on the 11th or not. So she said, if it turns out Prime Day is the 11th, we'll shift it 1 week. So today is the 18th of July. And it's 1 week after Prime Day. So give us, how was this year?
This year was the best yet, although I feel we say that every year. So I'm curious if I'll be saying this the rest of my career in the Amazon space. But we saw some really interesting stats that I'm excited to share. So one of the big things that we saw this year that wasn't as evident last year is the increase in CPCs. It was out of control this year in many categories. And so I'm sure there were a lot of brands that blew up in terms of their tacos and ad spend this year. We were really on top of it. I shared with you, Nick, before we start recording, even I was up at 3 a.m. At the turn of midnight on PST. I'm on the East Coast because there's always surprises. And we in general saw that CPCs increase 90% during Prime Day. So in many cases, they almost doubled, but very broad category terms. So anecdotally, we brought up a lot of beauty brands. Mascara, at one point, the CPC was close to $30. For context, most mascaras sell less than, their list price is significantly less than $30. So we had to massively pull back on some of those broader terms. And then we do have clients where they are leaders in their category, and the competitors were very, very aggressive in bidding on our clients' branded terms. And some of our clients' branded terms also got up into that $25 to $30 CPC simply for brand defense. And we had some clients on day 2 where we were very focused on that tacos metric and making sure that it was a high sales day, but also they still made money at the end of the day after their discounts. And we shut off all branded campaigns for some of our clients for day 2 because they were losing epic money on it. And we would rather allocate, we made the strategic decision that, look, if they're searching our client's brand on Prime Day, they're looking for our brand. And we would rather invest those dollars on incremental audiences and then just reallocated that budget to generic keywords. So that was pretty intense, and those are some real-time decisions. Some other interesting stats we saw is we compared the average lift in sales to their June average. And so across our portfolio, because we really planned and we're very deliberate in making the most out of Prime Day, on average, our clients saw a 854% increase over Prime Day compared to their June average. And the clients that really leaned into Prime Day, who did 30% or more off on their deals, did over 16x their daily average in June, which is pretty wild.
Yes. Well, those are crazy numbers. So that's what Prime Day does, huh?
That's what Prime Day does when you do it right. We definitely saw that Prime exclusive deals were the best way to approach your deals instead of doing coupons. Lightning deals did okay, but honestly, the Prime exclusive deals were just as strong in terms of visibility and performance. And then I think a really other interesting takeaway that we saw was that in June, organic sales on average accounted for about 56% of our clients' sales. During the Prime Day period, organic sales were 71%. So why is this significant? Well, everyone's obsessed with ads during Prime Day, but as I kind of alluded to, if you're too focused on it, you can spend a lot of money without a lot of great return. And it really justifies the importance of building your organic ranking visibility on Amazon for the months leading up to the big deal event. I think a lot of brands, especially smaller brands, right, who don't necessarily have planning processes in place, they're like, oh yeah, Prime Day's happening. Let me throw a deal up. Oh yeah, Prime Day's happening. Let me just make some tweaks a few days before Prime Day and let's go. No, like you should start to really identify what keywords you want to be on page one for during these deal days and launch ranking campaigns 6 weeks in advance so that you can maximize your placement.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. As far as building your brand, you really need to be building your organic traffic for those keywords.
Yeah.
So that way, most of your sales come from organic, and then you support it with the paid. Well, our conversation can go on forever. You're sharing a lot of gems. So we'll have to bring you back to another one because every one of these things are actionable things. So, okay, we want to now get to know you a little bit. This is my favorite part of every episode. So tell us about Laura Meyer. Where did you grow up? And share with us your early life experiences.
Yes, so I'm originally from Michigan. You mentioned earlier how I joke that I've been in retail since I could walk and talk, and that is because I grew up working in my dad's hardware store. I was the bag girl, the cashier, the paint department. I did it all. Although surprisingly, I'm not as handy as I would hope. But I think working or growing up in a family that was very retail centric, that was very work hard, was a big part of our culture. It really instilled a grit in me that you can't learn in school, right? And that's something I really hope to pass along to my two daughters, that you can be the brightest person in the room, but if you don't have the drive to do it, you aren't going to be a top performer. You listen to many successful people. My husband and I listened to a podcast where Jay Leno spoke about how he claims that he was the hardest working comedian and how he would see his competition at Lakers games and he was at home writing jokes for his show the next night. So I think that culture was very much centralized in my upbringing. And I went to college in Ohio, had a great time there. And after college, I knew I wanted to go to New York City. And I didn't have a job lined up yet because not a lot of New York-based companies were recruiting at my college at that time. So I just bought a one-way ticket to New York without a job. I knew maybe two people in the city because I just knew and was determined to be in the city of opportunity. And from my point of view, if you can make it in New York, you can make it just about anywhere. And got an internship within 24 hours of being in Manhattan, and then use that as my base to then eventually land my job at Amazon.
So, I mean, growing up in the retail business on the shop floor, what was it that interested you? Was it the money-making part? Was it the interaction with people? Was it the knowledge of the products that you were selling? What was the attraction for you? I'm talking in the early days.
Well, in the early days, I was forced. I didn't have much of a say, to be honest. It would be, as a very, very busy kid, I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of activities and extracurricular activities. But if there was a Saturday and I didn't have a soccer game, I was expected to be down at the hardware store working. And so, as a teenager, did I love that? Not necessarily. I'd rather be at a friend's house, to be honest. But as an adult, am I thankful that that was part of my upbringing and overall experience? Absolutely, because it taught me the value of money and it taught me a really good work ethic. And also, I learned a lot of excellent business social skills. That's something that really does concern me about the younger generation, is because they're so glued to their phones, there are certain social skills that they're not learning, where I was a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old having to converse with adults and showing them where the plumbing department was, or running them up at the cash register. And to this day, I will have a conversation with just about anyone, and I'm not intimidated by that. And I can already see in younger, just people in my life, that there's a lot of social anxiety out there as a result. But that's a whole other conversation.
Well, I mean, look, this at the end of the day, unfortunately, the show is called Amazon Legends, but the focus is on the entrepreneur, on the leader of the business, and I definitely want to uncover some of these things because they are the drivers of what happens on Amazon at the end of the day. And you're right, lacking social skills and having that anxiety for interaction, having these virtual relationships in front of a computer or on your phone, it's leaving a lot of the stuff out.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
And I think, in terms of marketing, right? What do we all yearn for? Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, we all still want human connection. And I think the more that can even come out in your brand, where people feel connected to the story, that's such a powerful thing for your business.
Yes, telling that brand story in a way that will connect with the potential buyers of your product.
And by the way, there's a lot of excellent private label businesses where they started with a Facebook group. They started with a community, right? And then through that community, whether they were selling beauty products or, kitchenware products, they then started with this base of brand ambassadors, and that's how they were able to build initial momentum.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I had a guest for my listeners, look up Matt Atkins, and that's what he does. He drives his business all from groups, Facebook groups, but these are not like, go register with 300 groups. That's not it. So he focuses on a handful of them that he's heavily invested in, but not just him. All the members of that group, they support each other. So when there's a new product coming out, so he calls it influencer marketing, but it really is not. It's community based support. That's what it is. Well, it's a great conversation. So what I'm hearing from you is growing up and working on, in your retail business as a kid, even though it's forced, it's given you the tools really to be successful in the future. And this gaining these social business skills is key, because that's really, at the end of the day, will get you anywhere.
I mean, I think so, right? Because even when you're building a business, whether it's a product business versus a service business, you're still only as good as the people that are part of that business.
Right.
And there's the leader, of course, but there's also everyone else. So you have to have the social skills to build up the enthusiasm, and also really understanding how to have those direct conversations that can sometimes be uncomfortable, right? It's very easy to be, excuse me, it's very easy to be nice and do what I call kick the can down the road when someone doesn't do something up to your expectation. You just need to be pretty straightforward and addressing it right away. Otherwise, it'll continue to be an issue. And that's, that's just the human side of business. And I think the human side of business is so important.
I mean, leader, it's fine, of course, you need a leader to do anything, and being a leader is one thing, but you are not a leader if you don't have people around you, and those people are around you for who you are, and otherwise they will not be around you. There is a saying that I heard from one of the former politicians. He's no longer in politics. He said, a leader who doesn't have anybody around him is not a leader, but a lonely man taking a walk on his own. So it's like that. So this was a great experience, obviously, for you. Great conversation, Laura. So tell us, how can people reach you and reach out and connect with you and learn from you?
Absolutely. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me, follow me, Laura Meyer. Should be pretty easy to follow. That's really the best way to get in touch. I put out a lot of great insight reports, white papers. All of those Prime Day stats I quoted earlier in the show are actually from my LinkedIn post directly. So that's really the best way to find me.
And the company is Envision Horizons, right?
Yes, Envision Horizons, we are an Amazon agency that specializes in businesses doing 2 million or more a year on Amazon.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Excellent conversation. And I'm sure people will apply what they learned in this show. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Nick.
Before we wrap up, don't forget to visit www.getida.com/legends to learn more and sign up to claim money for your lost or damaged inventory with Amazon. Your first $400 in reimbursements will be free. www.getida.com/legends, and that's www.getida.com/legends. And this brings us to the end of another episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the episode, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too.